everybody, Mike Donahue here with Brian May.
Hey everybody.
We are on. You're on Groomed.Connect in 5-ish. So yeah, we laugh about the 5-ish because we usually go a little longer. But last week we had Rick Cole on the program, and it was a great program. And he talked a little bit about. I asked him a question about the cult, whether he thought the youth group was a cult. And so, Brian, let's talk about that a little bit, about the cult of personality. He used the phrase cult of personality. What are your thoughts? I know you had a lot to talk about on this.
Yeah, first of all, I mean, we experienced that. I mean, I experienced that. We experienced that in the youth group. We experienced that. I watched it happen at the school. I'm sure you watched it happen in Rockford. I Googled personality cult, and Google AI tells me, and it's Google and it's AI, so it must be truth, that a personality cult is a group of people who are devoted to a charismatic leader. The leader is presented as a great person who should be admired and loved, and the group is controlled and influenced through flattery, praise, and other methods of persuasion. So I got to thinking, it might be a little confusing to people to think about the word cult in the context of a Christian church, because typically we don't mix those two things together, right? But I think Rick had a really important point, and not only with Jeannie, but I think it proliferates throughout a lot of churches today that are led by people who are very charismatic. And I kind of think about a personality cult in the context of a Christian ministry as someone who sort of inserts themselves between a person and Jesus, as though that personality cult leader, I guess, if we want to describe it that way, is someone who is intermediating that relationship or even superseding that relationship to where people, they're not really learning how to follow Jesus and live a life out of that ethos. What they're really doing is they're living out of the influence of this person because, I don't know, they want to be close to him or they want their approval. And talk about your experience with that a little bit.
Well, I think that gets confusing for people because it's convoluted. There is some godly stuff
Yeah.
involved in it, right? Because I remember, with Jeannie, there was some seeking of God and on my part, and I could, they were mixed. So yeah, I was confused sometimes because I was like, well, yeah, she's kind of breaking some rules here and going over the line. But at the same time, I'm seeking God, and it's just really convoluted. And I think, part of the problem is that people want that, right? Even going back to the biblical times, Paul had to address it when he said, some of you think you're following Paul, some of you following Apollos, whatever. There was that cult of personality even back then. People were saying, well, I follow this disciple, I follow that disciple. And Paul put a stop to it and said, no, we follow Christ. I think it's up to the leader, because it can be intoxicating. I've been on that side of it. I've been the youth pastor that had the charisma, and they want to be around me and they're waiting to talk to me. And you feel that. You feel like, oh, I get to influence these people. But it crosses a line when your motive starts to get into, pushing your own agenda and wanting to have a big youth group, and you don't care who you hurt, and you start, working the back channels and, manipulating, and, you can get away with certain things. And sometimes it gets even, as evil as, exploiting them sexually, exploiting them, financially, and not, I never experienced that. I'll just say, I never got into that stuff, but I did feel that temptation to, to let people like think I'm really important. It's like you're a local celebrity type of thing. We've talked about that before, but when Rick said cult of personality, I thought that's right on, because that's what I think Jeannie just kept that going.
Yeah.
I think she enjoyed that. I think she liked it. I think she learned how to leverage it, learned how to use certain emotions. Altar calls were very specific. The atmosphere was very specific. She was going for something. She was working it, and I think she had specific people in mind every week as well.
Yeah, I think you made some pretty important distinctions there. We all have a tendency to admire people that they might be charismatic. We might respect them for this or that or the other thing. I mean, that's just a human tendency. And the same token, I mean, let's face it, we all have egos, and that feels good when we feel that like people put us up on that pedestal a little bit, right? Um, I think maybe where the difference comes in is when a leader, a person who's in that position leverages that to their benefit and begins to take advantage of people, whether consciously or unconsciously. They leverage their charisma to take advantage of people and to get them to do things or believe things or act in certain ways using that. And I think whether that's in the context of a I don't know, a business or a church or anything else, I think that's when you start to scratch your head and say, gosh, this feels really cult like because this is more about this person, especially in a church, than it is about Jesus.
Yeah, yeah. I think that part of the deal with what we experienced was again the mixing of good stuff and bad stuff, and that's been coming out. One of the things that one of the comments I got from somebody, I mean, there was a really long thread. This person on, so I'm not going to unpack everything she said, but one of the things that she said was she is getting the idea that um, Jeannie was very toxic and very needing of attention and needing like insecure. And I would say that's that's probably true. There's probably some insecurity that she really liked that attention, needed that attention. It fed something inside of her. I'm not going to go as far as saying she's a narcissist. I don't know. Somebody else was more skill and qualifications can make that judgment, I, but it was definitely on that thread of wanting and needing attention all the time.
Yeah, and I think that's a dangerous thing. We've talked before, about the book of sayings, the book of Jeannie Mayoisms. A hungry need is a dangerous need, right? And that drives people to that kind of thing. So um, I guess for my part, in the 5-ish minutes we have here, uh, I think it's important for people to examine people who have that kind of charisma and while they're leading. I think it's okay to question their motives and make sure that those motives are pure and or as pure as they can be. I mean, none of us, we've talked about this, but to not feel intimidated or as though you're being, rebellious or disrespectful or any of those kinds of things before you yield that influence to a person. Ask some questions.
And don't be afraid to say no to that person and watch what they do. If they're telling you that you need to be doing something in the name of the Lord, they think that whatever they're trying to get you to give money or give your time, that kind of thing, and they're not giving you that. They're giving you an emotional price tag, and I think that's the other thing that manipulators do is they give
Yeah,
there's an emotional price tag for you saying no or for whatever your answer is going to be. If you say to them, "Hey, I need to pray about this," or "I don't know if that's the right thing for me," and then there's an emotional price tag with that. That's really a telltale sign that that's probably a cult.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
if they're giving you a consequence for not following their direction,
yeah.
yeah, that gets cultish.
Yeah, yeah. Yielding your agency rather than trusting your gut and leaving that decision in your purview and not just blindly following, doing what they're saying because you're afraid of losing a connection with this person.
That's right.
Yep.
All right. Well, listen, this has been. I think we're close to five.
We're
I don't
pretty
know. I'm looking at
close.
the
Pretty
clock.
close.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you this Sunday night. Come by and join us at 5 Central. We'll post our next podcast. Groomed.Connect. Bye, Brian.
See y'all.